Hello and welcome. I know it's been a hot minute since I announced this doll, but they are finally all done and I'm so thrilled to show you. Today I'll be using a Generation 3 Twyla doll and I'll be making an OC of mine known as Wynjour Etos. Wynjour is a character of mine who I've drawn a few times, but I've never really decided on a final design for them, so we'll be doing that today with this doll. We'll begin with giving them a nice little haircut, putting them in hot boiling water. Once their head is a little 𝗃𝗶𝗃𝗃, we could then dig out all the remaining hair plugs with some needle-nosed pliers. Next we'll be using 100% acetone to remove the factory paint. Ugh. Sometimes it's a horror scene. For my 𝗠𝗲𝗶𝗹𝗀 doll, I used 𝗃𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗏 shrinking technique, so here's a comparison between a normal Monster High head and an already shrunken head. I'll be shrinking this character's head as well. I'll leave the link below for the tutorial, but basically what you do is take 100% acetone and soak the doll head overnight. As it absorbs the acetone, the head will inflate a little bit, but as it dries, it'll harden and shrink. I wanted to give this character some digigrade legs, so here I am designing some. This is labeled attempt number 1 because in my first attempt, I cut some corners and ended up gluing 2 of the joints together, which I really shouldn't have. It just ended up giving the character a 90-degree chicken leg, and they just wasn't really able to sit or be posed. But with the revisions I make later on, it makes a world of difference. Though I will be showing how I end up removing the leg, I just use a Dremel with a saw bit. Now for sculpting, we're going to make the epoxy kiss and mix well. I draw in some marks with a Sharpie where I'll be drilling holes for their antenna. Because this character is an insect-inspired fairy creature, they have features that resemble that of an insect. So I'll be sharpening up their face with the epoxy sculpt, and I'll be defining their cheekbones, jawline, and adding some extremities, such as mandibles, antenna, and some other horns. Here I'm just building up their antenna with some epoxy sculpt, making sure to cover up the wire. And here I am just making a mock-up of where their faux eyes will go. Unfortunately, I lost the footage of me making their horns and their mandible. I think my phone storage was just full, but hooray, here they are. Next, we'll be working on their hands. I saw in one of 𝗃𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏's videos that if you put the pins into the fingers, you could then actually pose them. So I would actually really like to give them longer fingers and elongated hands and claws, give them a more beastly appearance. That's one thing I really like about epoxy sculpt is if you're maybe not the best sculptor, you could then just slap it on and then play the reduction game of sanding as the fine details. And here I am just painting on a light purple to match the body. Please ignore those legs. Like I said before, I will fix it up. The only reason I'm showing it right now is because I really want to show kind of the smaller details that I add to the body, such as these little baubles. I end up giving a lot of texture to the body. I was finding the doll's legs were a little too clean looking, so I wanted to add a rougher texture to it, almost kind of like a scale or chitin look. I layered on some glue and then flattened it with the hot tip. And then to build up some of the joints to give it more of a segmented bug leg, I layered on even more glue and then added some spikes. I I then unify everything with the same lavender color, and then I paint over the extremities with a darker purple. I then also give them some little scales on their back. I imagine this portion of their body being like more hardened shell. I then use the sponge again to give the back a little more texture, just like the arms, and then I use a black wash to catch all of the tiny little details. I then use soft pastels to catch a little more of the finer details and bring a little more life to the body. I then started drawing on a little rib cage, which I then started to make into like a segmented thorax. I didn't mention this before, but here I am actually using acrylic paint, gouache paint, and watercolor pencils. I try to paint over that defining black line with a little more purple just to make it a little less dramatic. I then go back over everything with black soft pastel, I guess to make it a little more dramatic. Okay, my favorite part is the freaking face up, and if that's not your favorite part, you're lying. Off screen, I already sealed the face with Mr. Super Clear, so it is all set and ready for us to start drawing. I begin sketching in the eyes with watercolor pencils. I really love a crisp line, so I sometimes activate the watercolor pencils just to get a clear vision as to what my lines will be. After their face got painted, we lost their faux eyes, so let's go ahead and add that back. And I have to say, thank you for your patience with this doll. I really did not anticipate it to be a project that would take 10 months, though this past year ended up being very busy for me, so the doll ended up going on the back burner quite a bit. Around the time that I began this project, I was working on digital illustrations full-time, and then I had also gotten a full-time job, so unfortunately the doll wasn't a main priority for me, but I'm very happy to finally be done them and finally get to show you guys how I did it. So after blocking out a little more of their features, I just keep going with a little more details. After each significant step, I do go back and spray MSC on them. MSC is amazing because it's kind of like a save your progress. It helps not smudge previous layers. For this character, I really wanted their eyes to be a pop on their face. I really wanted their eyes to be crisp and noticeable and kind of be mimicking a nice glowing color. So I ended up using a lot of gouache paint for this face up. And now for a final touch, I'm gonna add some Prolax powder to them. Just cover their extremities up a bit, give them a nice shimmer. And here they are! Ooh, they're turning out marvelous. Alright, woohoo! We can finally reattach the head and the body. Because the head is shrunk, we will have to cut down the neck peg just a little bit. I then warm up the vinyl with a hairdryer. And then you could basically just squish it back on. Though I am trying my best to not break anything. This is always the scariest part. Alrighty, we can now start on the hairstyle. Woohoo! I was originally going to use nylon doll hair for this doll, but instead, because I actually shrunk the doll's head and I couldn't get to the hairstyle right away, the head has actually become rock hard. It is mentioned in Dorili's video that you should do it rather sooner than later, but because I couldn't get to it right away, we'll be using hair wefts instead, which is basically just combed out yarn. This character's hairstyle will be pulled back into 2 big space buns, and then we'll have quite a bit of intricate braids kind of looping and making designs on their head. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just gluing the hair down the part backwards, so then you can pull the hair over and then it'll make like a seamless part and you won't see any of the sides with the glue on it. Here I'm just pulling the little strands tight just to make the area where it'll connect to the bun. If the head was still malleable, I would have actually made the bun and then had it on a pin to then poke it through the head. But since that wasn't the case, that's okay. I'll be making it separately by using tinfoil and then wrapping it in the hair wefts. Next, I'll be attaching the space bun to the head with some OOAK glue and then securing the piece with some loose yarn and a felting needle, just to give it a little more surface area to grab onto. Gluing the bangs can be tricky since this character has more than a few additions to their head, but that's okay. With a little finagling, we'll be able to fit the hair weft around these appendages. Now I'll be starting some braiding. I keep running across these amazing dolls on Pinterest that had the most beautiful tiny braids with just like swooping curling designs, so I was inspired by that to try on this doll. Now before styling the braids, I'll be adding their miniature face wings. I made these in the same way that I made their actual wings, which I'll talk about a little later. But to secure them to the face, I just use a little blob of UV resin and let them sit. They're really starting to come together. Now I'm going to be styling the braids. To make it a little easier, I just use some thread of the same color and loop it through the braid a few times. And then I start to sew it through the hair on the head to secure it. And then that's how I'll be making the little loop-de-loos. Off screen, I have made a few extra braids and soaked them in a watered down glue. And then I just pin them into funky little shapes and then let them dry. I then just use some fabric glue to then attach them to their head. For some of the smaller braids that are already on their head, I just cover it in that watered down glue solution, and then I begin to make little shapes, and then I just use some sewing pins to help them keep their shape. follow this method all over their head and mainly covering the sides, and then I use a few extra braids that I made off screen to then wrap around the buns. And then we're all done, yay! Alrighty, so we're finally at attempt number 2 with the legs. Like I said before, I will be changing it for multiple reasons, but the cherry on top to this decision was that when I was working on it, the doll actually fell off my desk and the leg actually broke. So we'll be changing it and adding another joint. I decided to use these Cotter pins to secure the joints together. Note, at this time of me making this, I couldn't find small enough screws and nuts to secure them together, so I ended up just using a Cotter pin clipped very short and curved around the other Cotter pins to then make sure they could hold the joint and still be able to move them around. The screws would have definitely worked way better since it would reduce the floppiness of the leg. I just used some glue to try giving it a little more of a limit. So what I ended up doing was drilling 2 holes onto the bottom half of the leg and then 1 on the top, and then secured the pins with some glue, and then covered everything with epoxy, making sure not to smush anything into the joint itself. I used the epoxy to fill out more details since I wasn't satisfied with their design yet and I needed some more insect or creature elements to them. Then using my Dremel with a small head, I added some finer details to the legs. I really wanted to add some more chitin or like grooves to them. Listen, I am a maximalist when it comes to character designs and I love little details all over my characters, which is so funny because I put so much work into that and then end up covering them head to toe with clothes. I'm looking at you, Vera. Just kidding. It's cool when you get to go back to them and change up their outfit and you get to see all that nice little detail. Next, for the toes, I'll be using some clipped down Cotter pins with some wire to secure them to the foot. I did it this way because I wanted them to be able to move their toes so it wouldn't look so stiff when I try to pose them. I used some epoxy to build it up a little more, and here they are all complete. Alrighty, now back to painting. I paint the legs just like I did the body previously. Now that I added grooves and a little more details, I filled those in as well, trying to tie in the reds that I had in their face also into their legs. Apologies that this video is a little bit all over the place. As you can see, there's quite a few things with this doll that I had to go back and repeat or redo, just because later on I would find a better way to approach some parts, just like the legs and some of the body, and also just noticing how I wanted to add a little more details to things. Off screen, because I finally had a smaller head for my Dremel, when I was doing the details on the legs, I actually went in and added the little details to the body as well. So here is the segmented chitin that I wanted. I actually used my Dremel to carve it in. And then just as I did before, I used Gouache, Acrylic, and Vallejo paints to kind of bring a little more life to the body, and then add some finishing touches with some soft pastel. We then make sure to seal with Mr. Super Clear and some varnish. To add their claws, I used some cardstock paper, cut it out and glue it to their feet and hands, and then I used some UV resin and end up painting over everything. Alrighty, onto the wings. I begin with drawing the shape I would like, and then using some wire, I then trace the shape, then twist off the ends with a little loop. The loop is very important since this is how we'll add it to the doll. And then we'll take some wire and make a little separate loop, twisting it off. This is also very important because this is what will be attached to your doll's back, and then also what will help the wings be articulated. I'll be using this material I've seen used on like Easter baskets. It's called Cellophane, So we'll be covering the wire frame that we just made on both sides, and then we'll be tucking it into some tin foil. I've normally seen this be done with like tin foil and an iron, but since I didn't own one, I just used a hair straightener. I like how when the cellophane is heated, it gets these little wrinkly textures, which is perfect for fairy wings. I then cut out all the wings and then use a lighter to melt and seal the edges. I had to be very careful since the cellophane melts so fast. I had a few spots that were melted a bit too much, but that's okay. We'll be able to fill that in with hot glue. Now it's time to decorate them. I used some gouache paint to add on the little details. For this character, I was inspired by butterflies and moths, among some other bugs. They're honestly just a big mishmash of different bugs at this point. But regardless, I really wanted to add some big hypnotizing eye patterns. I imagine something they do is that they flutter their wings in chaotic patterns to try to hypnotize you, luring you into a deep sleep in which they can implant their wicked little nightmares. They're just a weird little guy. After painting and sealing the wings with some varnish, I then coat them with some Pearl X powder to give them those lovely dusty moth-like wings. Next we'll be putting them all together. This is when I actually ended up finding tiny enough screws. I saw this articulated wing tutorial in one of Delightful's videos, and boy oh howdy was it useful. So we take our bigger wing and then screw in the little screw. Next we get that handy dandy little loop we made earlier and put it in behind, and then we grab our smaller wing and then seal it all together. Using an X-Acto knife, I poke some holes, and then using a itty bitty drill bit, I then drill in the holes for the wings. Insert with some super glue. And there you have it. Yippee! Next up, I'll be working on their clothes. I'm using this shiny patterned fabric that I got from 𝗃𝗶𝗶𝗀𝗀 on Etsy. I really like the shapes in this fabric and wanted to try creating an insect-like abdomen for Wynjour. I was originally thinking of making them have a big earwig-like tail. I didn't want the doll to be too off-balanced and be falling over all the time, so I opted out of making a little tail. Instead, I gave them little spikes on their back, but I wanted to exaggerate the silhouette a little bit more, and I was inspired by the other mother from Coraline. She kind of has like a spiky crinolette or a piece that comes off her corset. I'm not too sure what it's called, but I'll put it on screen now. So something about Wynjour is I really wanted to play with the juxtaposition of their personality. They themselves are very playful and mischievous, so I wanted to give them a big poofy dress, the shape that kind of catches their whimsy, and then have it contrast with the sharp angles in their own features such as their face, their mandibles, their spikes, and then also playing with their outfit design such as the sharpness of their corset and the faux spikes. So here's the dress that I made them. I didn't record the process just because I'm still very new to sewing small doll clothes, and it definitely took me more than a few attempts, but I actually used the pattern from Delightful's Etsy store. I think it's called the sundress pattern. I just altered it here and there, giving a sharper bust line and some eyelets. Here I'm just using some nail art gemstones and some Pearlex powder. And I'm just using those little gemstones to kind of decorate their dress and decorate their corset. I keep calling it a corset, but I'm not too sure if that's actually the right word. It's kind of more around their hips than their waist, huh? Okay, their outfit is all complete. Off screen, I made a little petticoat to go underneath their skirt and make it even more poofy. I'm really satisfied with how their outfit turned out. Normally making doll clothes is really intimidating, and that is always the part I get stuck on for a while, which in this case I did, but I'm really happy that it all turned out really nice. I'm really happy too that I was able to capture sharp silhouettes that I really wanted from the clothing. I don't know, I feel like it really captures them, how I've always pictured them in my head and how I've pictured them like when I have been drawing them. Now that their outfit is complete, we can finally dress them up. Alrighty, time for the reveal! We made it! You guys, Wynjour was so much fun to make. They have definitely been a character I'd been struggling with coming up with a final design for the longest time. So I'm really happy that I was finally able to pull them all together and make them as a little doll. Thank you so much to my Patreon members for all your support. It means the world to me that you want to see what I'm creating and want to see the behind the scenes and the work in progress. Just, thank you. And thank you so much if you stuck around for the rest of this video. I'm so happy with how they turned out, and I hope you like it as well. I have even more characters and OCs I really want to make some dolls of, so you know, if you like what I'm doing, maybe stick around. I don't know. Regardless, I'm very thrilled to be able to make and share more things with you. So thank you for sticking around, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye! When I began this doll, I was actually originally going to use nylon hair, but because the head is actually shrunk, oh. Hi! Hi, baby! Oh, goodness, sweetie pie.